Good morning, my name is Leniel Gonzalez Alberto, and today I'd like to present an in-depth analysis about how my film, Despondent, was able to simultaneously challenge and uphold the conventions of film while still representing a variety of social groups and issues. See, to start off, Despondent's conventions do a great job at both upholding and pivoting away from the generic themes of its implemented genres, even if it's not obvious upon first glance. Despondent is a melodramatic thriller with direct influence from Felix Van Goren's film Beautiful Boy. Basically, a melodrama is a subgenre of drama characterized by its exaggerated emotions, stereotypical characters, and are most commonly designed to evoke strong feelings within the audience. The film's other genre, thriller, is usually defined as fast-paced, plot-driven, allowing the film to create intense suspense, dread, and/or excitement, which was mainly influenced by Christopher Nolan's The Batman Begins. Therefore, as an amalgamation of these two distinct genre types and their corresponding conventions, Despondent seeks to provoke strong emotional responses by placing characters in extreme and exaggerated situations. To start off, the melodramatic genre of the film is upheld throughout the whole film via the constant arising of strong emotions within the stereotypical protagonists. The two main protagonists of the film both face what can only be described as a gaping hole of emptiness within their hearts throughout the whole entire opening, emphasizing and exaggerating the feeling of being lonely. Our film then proceeds to double down on exploring the typical conventions of melodramas as we've seen by the conversion on the conversation between our female protagonist and her school counselor. This is a direct reference to the opening scene of the previously mentioned 2018 film Beautiful Boy, which takes place in a doctor's office in San Francisco. Throughout most of Goren's film, it frequently cuts between the doctor's office and the main story, thus using a non-linear structure to show the constant chaotic cycle of addiction. Despondent builds off of this idea by cutting back and forth between both protagonists, establishing a connection between the two of them despite them not meeting until the end of the opening scene. Furthermore, the voiceover of the female protagonist transferring between these cuts showcases how both protagonists think the same way, further foreshadowing them eventually finding one another. For our second genre, unlike melodramas, which tend to be mostly directed towards niche audiences, thrillers have taken the modern media film industry by storm and are one of the most commonly watched genres worldwide. As a thriller, our film's goal is to constantly build up suspense while still remaining plot-driven, and as a result, our film's composition is built around this idea. In The Batman Begins, Christopher Nolan builds suspense through the manipulation of the film's atmosphere. Within the opening scene of the film, we see a small Bruce Wayne fall into a dark, gloomy cave that feels claustrophobic and dangerous, simulating the paranoia of a typical thriller. This scene was the primary influence behind the setting of our film's counselor scene, where we put the female protagonist with her back against the wall and the light shining on her, making her the focal point. By recreating this feeling of a claustrophobic environment, Despondent is able to relate to the audience that the protagonist's only way of escape is to face their fears and head forward. This not only upholds the conventions of a thriller by focusing on a plot-driven story, but also slowly starts to build the suspense that will eventually lead to our film's first plot twist. By sticking to the conventions of genre, our film also adheres to Steve Neal's theory, which dives into the narratives around genre, especially when repeating certain ideas. Genres can create a sense of comfort for the audience. This allows them to easily identify the film's category, whilst on the other hand, by having different contrasting elements, it keeps the genre fresh and constantly appealing to the audience. In our film, Steve Neal's theory can be seen in effect as both characters can be seen struggling with mental issues shown by their dark and bleak surroundings, as previously stated. This leads me into the second half of my presentation, which is how social groups and issues are represented throughout the film. Our film does this by clinging to the theory of yet another media theorist by the name of Judith Butler. Judith Butler's theory challenges the traditional belief that gender is something fixed or natural, by famously stating that gender should not be thought of as a noun, but as a verb. Now, what does this exactly mean or do, you might ask? It basically means that instead of just naturally being born male or female, gender is socially created through actions, behaviors, and repeated performances, not just simply given upon birth. Her theory applies to our film Despondent via the two main characters, with one of them being a male, showcasing the generic male stereotype that a man needs to be strong-willed and never cry, whilst the other character represents a stereotypical female who cares about her body image and receives assistance from a counselor, whereas the male lead is left to fend for himself. This creates a contrast between the two genders to simulate today's society where women are usually judged or exploited for their looks rather than who they are, and men are looked down upon when they try to reach out for help, causing them to be labeled as weak or lesser than. By implementing stereotypical characters into our film, we can represent both female and male audiences who can relate to the character's struggle and the individual burdens one must overcome depending on their gender. By creating a clear contrast between the characters, our film also seeks to highlight the ever-growing separation between men and women, and how despite legally being equal, each side seeks to overpower the other. However, instead of bringing attention to the problem itself and its cause, Despondent focuses on how we should help each other as one species to combat bigger issues like mental health and come together. This connects back to our film's main genre being a melodrama, where in the beginning of the film, female and male audiences might feel strong emotions of disgust or tension toward one another, but by the end, these two audiences will begin to feel strong emotions of unity, developing understanding and bonding between the two. As you can see, our film Despondent has done an outstanding job at both upholding and building upon genre conventions while simultaneously representing some extremely important social issues related to gender and ethics. Thank you, have a wonderful afternoon, and I hope you're able to watch our film Despondent.